Hi, everybody. I want to thank Brandon for the invitation. I'm going to present my talk today, which is titled Video Game Production's Ludopolitical Regime and its Multidimensional Inequalities. In today's talk, I'm going to present an invitation to conceptualize for all of us game production not simply as an economic trade-off in the workplace, but a racialized and gendered problem of social reproduction and a problem of inequality rooted in politics. This is the project I hoped to have carried out in my book project, which is titled A Precarious Game, The Illusion of Dream Jobs in the Video Game Industry, in which I pose two main questions. First, what does love look like in the video game industry? And two, who can play and who has to work in the video game industry? I was interested in the ways in which love manifested itself in this global media industry. So, as you would all know, the typical argument in game production and the broader media industry studies goes something like this. Even if love leads to self-exploitation and undermine workers' autonomy, game workers enter trade-offs in the workplace because they love video games, right? So there's this interesting relationship between love and self-exploitation and its implications for workers' autonomy. To me, this produces a conundrum. On the one hand, game production is constructed as a solely economic activity, independent of politics and social reproduction. And two, to me, love remains at the level of the individual psychology rather than socio-materiality of life. So these were some of the problems that I was trying to overcome in my project. So one of the arguments I make in the book is that we have to move beyond grasping game production as simply as an economic process based on trade-offs between two supposedly equal parties. As you would understand from this statement, I'm very much invested in political economy. But also, I have learned a lot from feminist studies and affect studies and digital labor studies to display the materiality of love and labor to again make an argument about how game production is a problem of social reproduction rooted in politics, not just an economic trade-off in the workplace, but a broader problem of social reproduction rooted in politics. To make this argument, I propose the term ludopolitics, which I define as the complex assemblage of multidimensional, uneven power relations at the local and global level, ultimately setting the terms of who can play and enjoy work as opposed to those who have to work. Um, and this is the setting that I carried out ethnographic research for 3 years. I anonymously called this place, this medium-sized game studio Desire, which was founded in 1996, and it was bought out by a publicly traded company, which I call Digital Creatives, in early 2000s. And Desire was the flagship studio of Digital Creatives, and it was producing their most profitable franchise. And the parent company unfortunately went bankrupt in 2013. And in this whole process that I was doing research, workforce decreased from 240 to 186. And then after I finished my fieldwork, an additional 30 people were gone. So what I mean by this ludopolitical regime of production is basically I demonstrate that there are multiple levels of this highly unequal ludopolitical regime. On the one hand, there is the relationship between developers and the parent company, which I grasp through political economy. On the other hand, the second one is the privileged creatives, such as the programmers, artists, and designers. And then on the other hand, we have the precarious game testers, which gives us workplace inequalities. And the third level is developers' partners at home, right? What happens at home when these people pursue love at work, which gives us gender and social reproduction. And the fourth one is the cultural logic of ludopolitics, which give us the racialized and gendered production cultures. So let me go through these one by one. So this one, developers vis-a-vis the parent company looks something like this. There's the bigger financial markets, which goes us after digital creatives, and then which goes after Desire, which make the work of employees across the board precarious. So this interview is from a time when the studio had just published its most profitable franchise, and they should have been celebrating. But at the same time, as you see here, they were trying to help out the parent company, which had made extremely bad business decisions. So Ricardo, who was an artist and decided to leave basically the company after all this mess, he basically says, we have to produce all these dumb downloadable content. Otherwise, the parent company may not be able to make it another month. The second level, as I mentioned, is the relationship between the privileged creatives and precarious testers. Testers in Desire were seeing themselves as second-class citizens. So they were basically saying, we feel a little bit more like serfs. Okay, so it was a common sentiment to feel like a second-class citizen. And here, Martina, whom I interviewed more than at least I think 3 times, and with a focus group too, she, at the beginning of my research, called her job the dream job. But at the end of my research, she had already been laid off 3 times, and right now it was basically a dead-end job for her. She was feeling expendable, and she just wanted to be let go. And she says, I feel like all the work I put into this department was for basically nothing. And what I call degradation of fun occurs across testers, mainly because they feel like they're expendable. Testing is not always fun. You keep doing the same tasks over and over again, and they don't necessarily have an upward mobility kind of path that is given for them. And also, play also changes its meaning when play is your work. The third level is home. Right now, this is how it looks like in terms of the perspective of partners of these developers. So what is different here, right? That's a question that we should be asking, which is to say, in terms of gender relations, these women that I interviewed were not constrained to home. They were mostly employed. They were working. So the sexual contract was basically intensified by new communication technologies in this case. So on the one hand, Isabel, who was married to studio architect for technical art, was basically providing emotional support for her partner all the time, mainly because if he was grumpy, that would come home, right? So this is how she's supporting the studio. On the other hand, when these people are passionately crunching, domestic life basically looks like, these people were considering themselves to be like single moms, right? So Gina, who was an extremely witty woman, who was also in IT, and she was married to a technical artist. She would basically say, I'm a single parent. It's like living with a college roommate. We occasionally catch glimpses of him. But then these women did critique work a lot, more than their partners actually. Karen, who was a stay-at-home mom, she was married to a programmer, and she says the love of it is a problem. Actually, you can almost love your job too much because he's there all the time, and that's expected. It is extremely expected. Work from home, and when you're not working, you should be reading about games. And she says basically there is just no time left, right? So, of course, the other question here I wanted to emphasize is these women's class and ambivalent femininities, right? So these are mostly middle class people. So on the one hand, again, they were providing an exploited resource through their domestic work, and also at the same time they were, through their caring, compassionate mom positions and being married to a game developer, they were also the source of a symbolically legitimate form of cultural capital. At the same time, what was ambivalent is basically, on the one hand, they did endorse the neoliberal rhetoric of choice, which is to say, we knew it, this is how the industry works, but at the same time, they critiqued the highly techno-masculine work cultures, right? But again, at the end of the day, the heterosexual family unit was untouched. The final level of ludopolitical regime is cultural logic of ludopolitics, which is basically the ways in which these people feel about fun and escapism through the production of offensive game content, right? So when I was interviewing Matthew, he was basically saying, we know that we are definitely playing off of stereotypes of that culture based on the game genre that they were producing. And he and his other colleagues were saying this is all about escapism. It's fun, right? It's nothing to take seriously. But I was basically arguing that how escapism and fun are always racialized and gender practices, right? Because these people enjoy work, and it's a basically predominantly white and male workforce, and they are able to poke fun at others in representational and technological terms, mainly because, or the outcome being, their pleasure was basically the pain for others. So what then? This emphasis on inequality and social reproduction, I argue, shifts our focus from labor to life's materiality. It enables a critique of the institution of the employment relationship that is fundamentally constitutive of economic liberalism. And let's be honest, I argue that it's also constitutive of, at times, of critical labor studies. And through this terminology, we can emphasize the political dimension of work and its organization. And love is social, right? So it's communicated in colleges through degrees, they are practiced through game consoles and reproduced beyond the workplace in game developers' homes. Love of work in this industry is racialized and gendered, and it thrives at the expense of marginalized others through white masculine production culture, right? So we have to come to uh, grasp with these dimensions of love. And finally, as we discuss the future of work these days, as we discuss the impact of automation, as we are engaged in these conversations about gig economy and this whole authoritarianism of do what you love, right? It sounds like getting very benign discourse, but I would argue that do what you love is an extremely authoritarian discourse, which we need to again critically understand. This project, this and the conceptual framework of ludopolitics is basically an invitation to become killjoys against the promised ludic futures of the digital economy, which I think, especially in the context of the pandemic, right? As academics, we are also invested in these discourses of love and passion about work and research, but at the same time, maybe it might be time to become killjoys and to start critiquing this ethic of a playful ethic of work, which can be quite exploitative and alienating, as we have readily accepted the terms under which we get to work and engage with each other's work these days, and also teach under extremely difficult circumstances these days. So that would be my last point. As I'm looking at my chronometer, I should be saying goodbye and stop this recording. Again, thank you, Brandon, and I look forward to engaging with everyone else's work through different kinds of digital means. Thank you very much.